one. How many English-speaking people here? Plenty. That's good. How many US? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you will be a little bit in your country during this presentation. Let's go ahead. These are my coordinates in case you want to correspond by email. And today, I'll welcome you in space through some pictures and movies that I brought myself in space, but also were brought by my colleagues, NASA colleagues, French colleagues, Russians, and some others. As it was said a few minutes ago, I started in 1959 at the Air Force Academy of Salon de Provence, and since then I had always my eyes and face turned towards space. Man is an insatiable and tireless explorer, not only in space, but all life long. The day we get conceived is the day we start life, and you know, we know that at the other end is the end. And to fight for survival, that we will see in the next slides, we have to be an explorer. The baby who is just born is an explorer. The student you are is an explorer. The adult whom we are is an explorer. And until the end of our life, we are fighting for survival and we are exploring. So my first steps, Air Force Academy in 1959, where I had to spend 18 months of hard training before flying. So I hope you appreciate this kind of special situation that was possible 50 years ago. I think that joke today would not be appreciated by the military authority of the present time. But that was a joke. We were really training. This is before passing exams in the classroom. That's also a kind of training. Finally, flying. You can see on a very serious airplane. That's kind of a joke too, because before the end of those 18 months, we were authorized to fly on weekend only, on mostly gliders. Don't look at the bottle of wine, that doesn't exist anymore. Flying now on the trainers we had at that time, the CM-170, the Fugger Magister, was a very great airplane for training. And from 1962 to 1970, I was a fighter pilot. And in 1961, when I was still at the Air Force Academy, was the flight of Yuri Gagarin. And that's when I really decided that one way or another, I would try to do the same. Many people thought it was a joke. And, you see, today it was not completely a joke. From 1970 to 78, I was a test pilot in the south of France. I flew on many different airplanes, and I was responsible for the development and test flights of the Mirage F1. The selection for the cosmonauts for the French Commons started at the end of 1979 and lasted until 1980. And after Mr. Baudry and myself got selected to go to Moscow to start training, we spent 2 years down there, training in any conditions, such as this, for example, to simulate a landing in the water. landing in the water on a Soyuz is not a normal landing, it's an emergency landing. It happened only once in the history of the Russian spaceflight on a Soyuz where the crew were 2 sailors. So sometimes the hazards of life and situation point to something very funny. 2 Russian cosmonauts were from the Russian Navy, pilots from the Russian Navy. They boarded that Soyuz, and they had to land in a lake that was icy. There was a thin cover of ice on that lake. So, of course, the Soyuz broke the ice, went below the ice started to get rebuilt again before the emergency system came to rescue them. So when a helicopter could get the parachute that was still over the ice, take the Soyuz out of the water and the ice, bring to the shore, and these 2 guys say, never again. We had a space flight, that's enough for us. So the first space flight was called PVH, first manned space flight for France, and happened from the 23rd of June to the 2nd of July, 1982. Our crew, Commander Jadi Baikov in the middle, Ivan Shenkov, the board engineer on the left of the pictures, and myself. Launched from Baikonur, 526 seconds to reach the first orbit. That's very short. It's the same with the space shuttle. It's the same with any system going to orbit with a manned vehicle. That's a little bit less than 9 minutes. That's the time for an airliner to get to 15,000, 20,000 feet. During that flight, we had a program of medical experiments. And on those medical experiments, we had an echography program. We had a big equipment that was brought on board for echography, neurosensorial experiments, technological. We had 5, if I remember well, cartridges with components that were melted in a furnace to see how crystals can be formed in zero gravity. Astronomy, there were 2 experiences in astronomy. One called Pyramid, where we are trying to detect and make pictures of very faint objects in the cosmos. And another one, the last one, a study of the effects of radiation on life organisms. We had some seeds, some leaves that were taken in a special container and that were receiving radiation and particles. The results were quite interesting, showing that once you get a particle, there is a change. So human beings have to remember that. There are a lot of radiation in space, a lot of particles that you get every second. And at night, for example, in the evening before you go to sleep, when you are in a dark night and you get particles all over your body, but some get into your eyes. And on my 3rd flight on the space shuttle, I remember that one night we had a flash. The particle that gets to your retina, of course, destroys some of your cells, and the result to the brain is you see a flash, as if someone was in front of you taking a picture with a flashlight. And that evening, we had one flash every 6 seconds. So you understand why sometimes you think 45 days in space, that was enough. Some of my friends I've gone up to 2 years and 3 months. Mr. Krikalev is now a recordman of space duration after 2 years and 3 months. The Russian doctors and other doctors in the world are very interested by his life. He's a sportsman. He's a very accomplished sportsman, and he did not change. I met him again a few months ago. He's still doing a lot of sport, much more than average, and he looks like someone who has never been up there. So it's good for the others. Echocardiography, just a picture showing you how elegant it is when you're in space doing this kind of experience. Neurosensorial, this kind of position is also one you can have only in space. Try to do that in your bedroom, and you call me, tell me what was the result. Then in 1984, Patrick Baudry and myself moved to NASA Houston for a second space flight, this time on the other side. And the flight was performed by Patrick. I was his backup, and he was my backup when we were in Moscow. It was also a short flight, 10 days on space shuttle, Discovery. The difference, of course, many people ask us, what is the difference? Did you notice any difference between NASA, excuse me, and the Russian system? And of course, there are a lot of difference. But the main one for us was, it was a world of airmen. And this is probably why the United States very quickly decided to send an airplane to space, a space shuttle, because the population, the active population, the operational population, were airmen. There were plenty of pilots, engineers from the Air Force, and many engineers at NASA had been working on aeronautical engineering. So that was for us, as we are also two military pilots, the main difference, a world of airmen. 1986, 1988, I went back to Russia for a second training, this time for a long duration flight. And I think we have to look at the time, because that's okay. I tell you quickly how I had the chance to go and do that flight. Mr. Gorbachev at that time was the head of Russia, of the Soviet Union, and I had a chance to meet with Mr. Gorbachev 4 or 5 times during one visit that he had in France. And the people at the French Space Agency, CNES, were telling me, you have no chance to go back because this is no one other country, foreign country, ever had a second flight with Russia. So how do you imagine that they will fly again someone from France? So I said, anyway, I will try. So it's also a message. When you want something, just remember it can happen. You want it, you get it. Even if around you people say, that won't work. You want it, you get it. So the last evening before Mr. Gorbachev left, the ambassador, Russian ambassador, called me and said, okay, tomorrow it's at my place. There will be plenty of people. The militaries will be in their uniform. Until that time, I had always been a civilian. And he said, be in your uniform. Mr. Gorbachev likes to see people in uniform. The son of General de Gaulle will be there. He also will be in his uniform. So come in that way. So I was there. There was 300 people. Mr. Mitterrand and Gorbachev started to meet everyone, but no one was speaking Russian, so it was fast enough. When they arrived in front of me, Mr. Gorbachev said, oh, you are again here, but this time I see you are with the right clothes. And he was looking at the Russian decorations that I had, and he said, I heard that you want to go back to Moscow to train again and go for a space flight. So I thought I was falling backwards. And Mr. Mitterrand was on the right side, was asking the interpreter, what does he say? What does he say? What is he talking about? And Mr. Gorbachev turned to Mr. Mitterrand and said, we talked together this afternoon about that, and we are ready. Come on when you want. And that's how I got that second space flight. So yeah, I tell you, if you want something, get the strength to get it. It was a long duration flight, initially scheduled for 3 months. And happily, because one of the modules on Mir was not ready, the flight was shortened to 1 month. But that was great. That was a beautiful flight with extravehicular activity, one EVA, which was also a fantastic experience. Training is long. You train about 10 times in water the time that you will spend in space, in outer space. But even that kind of training in the water is very interesting, very motivating. Leaving for Mir space station with a crew of Commander Volkov and Sergei Krikalev, the guy who is now more than 2 years in space. Sergei was flying his first flight, was very young. 4 weeks in orbit. That is one of the pictures that we made during our flight. The program during that flight was a little bit similar to the program of the first space flight. Medical experience, technological, and at that time we were preparing the Hermes project. Hermes was a space vehicle that was supposed to be developed by Europe, and happily it was too ambitious, and after 4 years we had to cancel. Then for me in 1989, after that second flight, I had to be back at the French Space Agency in Paris as the head of the astronaut office. We had already 2 more selections of astronaut cosmonauts, and the population was of around 9-10 people, and everyone, of course, working on the Hermes project. 94 to 98, I moved to NASA Houston, still being a CNES member. And that move to Houston was a kind of the same story than there was the one with Mr. Gorbachev. During the first trip in NASA in 84, 85, I met with Mr. George Abbey, who became a good friend of mine, and later became the head of Johnson Space Center in Houston. And in those years, the CNES wanted to have a meeting with NASA authorities to send some of our people to Houston to start training. So I told CNES, okay, I know Mr. Abbey, let me go first and negotiate with Mr. Abbey the future of our population. So I went to Houston, met with George. The meeting was scheduled for 1 hour. During 1 minute, not more, we talk about that situation. The second minute, Mr. Abbey told me, okay, are you ready to come? And I told him, of course, but I'm here mostly for my people. No, you come first, and then we get the other guys. 3 days later, that was on a Friday, on Tuesday, I was moving to Houston. And I'm still there. So it was very long. From 94 to 2002, followed the astronaut class 95. That's a 1.5 year preparation with what we call astronaut candidates, a population of 22 people. I flew on 97 on the STS-86 space flight on the space shuttle. I was a mission to Mir. That was the time when the United States and Russia decided to cooperate in space. 98, I had to exit CNES, and happily at that time, minister in charge of space did not like astronauts at all, And so he told me, you are 60 years, so now you have to retire. That's the French law. And Mr. Abbey and Mr. Goldin, head of NASA, already told me, if you are interested in staying here as an American astronaut, you are more than welcome. So in 98, I became a NASA astronaut and kept there. And a couple of years later, got a dual citizenship and became a US NASA astronaut and assistant to the Johnson Space Center director for ISS international operation. And 2001, I was training for a fourth space flight that would have happened in 2002. And happily, I got an accident at a Home Depot store. All my US colleagues here probably what is Home Depot. Do you know Home Depot? Yeah. Don't go to Home Depot without watching over your head. So I had to stop training. And in 2002, I moved to Titronics, which is a company under the wing of NASA, 85 people. Half of the population is working at the Johnson Space Center, and about 70%, 65% of our contracts are with NASA. The space flight to the Mir space station with the space shuttle lasted 12 days. It was fully technological, very few scientific experiments. We brought to Mir about 3.5 tons of hardware, and that was a very pleasant flight. So now, I won't talk about my own experience anymore. That was just to frame the presentation, talk in general about man in space. It's a little bit more than half of a century. And so we talk about the past, present, and future. What is interesting is that man in the third dimension is about a century. We can say it started 1910, and really when aviation started a little bit before World War I. In 1961, 50 years later, Yuri Gagarin was flying to space, and all that is now 50 years ago. So we have a century and two halves, and it's very interesting to look at the first half and the second half to see the difference. 50 years later, that's where the ISS was exactly 50 years, almost finished. So this is a tremendous accomplishment. If we look at the complexity of this space station, and looking again, remember the images of Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin, see what was done until the end of the first half of the century, and what was done 50 years after Yuri Gagarin flight. And we could have a full conference about the ISS, international cooperation, the results of the ISS, and so on, to take a one-day conference. Today, the astronaut and the robonaut on board the space station, that's also a tremendous step forward. Tomorrow, Mars, what is tomorrow? 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50? We don't know yet. We all hope it would be in the 2040s, but we have no reason to affirm and no elements to affirm it will happen in 2040. And beyond. And beyond. Why do we explore? Why do we go to space? But again, going back to what I told you 15 minutes ago, why do we explore? We just explore because we need to survive. Life on Earth is a constant survival challenge. And exploring is in our genes. Everyone is exploring. Even someone going to work in the morning is the most boring place. He's an explorer. And where are we today, and where do we go? From the door of our prehistoric caves to the gate of eternity, where are we today? That's an interesting questions. Are we still in the caves, or did we move most of our civilization to the end? With what is happening today, that question comes to our mind every day. At least I hope it happens to you. Happened to me. Did it happen to you? Well, where are we going? Okay, they don't care. The quest to understand mysteries surrounding us. Why such a short distance at the speed of light in a lifetime? If I go here, then you won't hear me. Where is the light here? If I look at that galaxy and take a point here, a small point, small of these dots, at the size of a galaxy, that the travel that we could do in a lifetime at the speed of light, which is very little. And the speed of light, we're still far away from the discoveries that will allow us to travel at such speed. Why is life so short then? Why do we die? Why is the universe so big? Are we alone? Who thinks we are not alone? Ah, good. You have seen Gravity and the other one? Yeah. What the other one? What's the name? Forgot. The speed of light. Is that the limit? So our galaxy, or a galaxy that looks like ours, almost 15 billion years ago, the age of the universe, that's what we think, the Big Bang. 5 billion years, the solar system. 3.5 billion years, life, embryonic life on Earth. The first life, microbian viruses and so on Earth. 650 million years ago, organized life, and then 6 million years ago, the human ancestors. That's when monkeys or other animals were traveling on their back legs. But I think you had a presentation yesterday by Mr. Coppens who told you a lot about that. So I will be short. We are just interested. We know that for us, it's 100, 200, maximum 300,000 years ago. So compared to the 15 billion years, the age of the universe, this is a very short thing. And if we reduce the time of the existence of the universe to 1 year, consider the universe was created in 1st of January, 1 year, then human being on Earth is just 1 second before midnight, the 31st of December. So I hope there are many more seconds following us. From Sputnik to Mars, 1 century of spectacular progress. So we come back again to this second half of the century. And spectacular progress due to digital science and the exponential increase of the data flow. What we use now compared to what was used at the time of Gagarin is a spectacular progress. So quickly, in 1957, the beep beep of Sputnik, later on the radio. Let's go to the next one. Time is going. analog radio beep on Sputnik, analog radio communication, voice communication with Gagarin, and Apollo 11, called the first Apollo missions, digits on the moon, and primitive computers. But when we talk about primitive computers, you have all of you here have heard about the computer on board the Apollo spacecraft, which could be compared to a nowadays cell phone. And they went to the moon with that. So I don't have the movie here, but yeah. So this is an interesting movie, very short, that has been given by NASA very lately. That the flight of John Young with, I think, Gene Cernan, one of the last flights in the moon, when 20 minutes before leaving back to Earth, they realized that they had completed the program. They still had energy, they still had power on their Jeep, and asked NASA, can we do some more experiments with the Jeep? And people at NASA were naive enough to say yes to such a proposition. And John Young went into the vehicle. Gene Cernan was having the camera. They turned off all the other cameras on the ground. And John Young had the first safari in history on the surface of the moon. Can you imagine someone doing that now? Probably would be a lot of heart attacks on Earth. 81 space shuttle, 5 computers, fly-by-wire. And it's interesting to see that the shuttle flew with those computers and for the 30 years of the life of the space shuttle. 30 years using the same computers that were created in the 70s. And so in the nose of the shuttle, we had 5 big magnetic tape bonds that were the memory of the computers. Magnetic tape bonds. Most of you have never seen that in their life. Again, are we far from our caves and close to eternity or not? What we're interested in now is to know where are we about space. A big change has happened since Mr. Obama became president of the US. The participation of private funds relative to public funds, for many reasons, not only to spend less money, because in fact, right now, those companies that work for NASA in space are paid from NASA budget. So right now, we don't save any money. We just transfer part of our money to private companies. I'll talk again about that later on. That's still okay about time? What was done till today? The sound and robots, Sputnik in 1957, a big surprise. The moon in the 60s, buoyed by the US and Russia. Mars in the 70s, of course, went very, very fast compared to the human spaceflight. And Voyager gets out of the solar system. And we are still receiving from time to time some information from Voyager. The humans, Gagarin 61, Apollo 69, Shuttle 81, the ISS 2000, and Mars, maybe in 30 years. The diagram, but human performance is the third dimension. I shared here the picture in 2 halves, the first 50 years and the second 50 years. And what is interesting to see is that until the 60s, 70s, it was a race for records. Everyone, mostly of course the US and the Soviets, were trying to break records. The blue arrow is what we call the military and test flight that went all the way up to the limit of the atmosphere at the same period, at the end of those 50 years, 60, 70. Commercial aviation, of course, was that started 15 years later, at the end of World War I. Commercial aviation went up to 40,000 feet and remained there until now. They reached the 40,000 feet in the 50s, at the exception of Concorde, which was a very interesting experience too, to show that commercial aviation could go higher and faster. And the yellow arrow is a space trajectory right to the moon, 10 years less than 10 years after the flight of Gagarin. And after that, back to what we call LEO. LEO is the low Earth orbit, where we have now the space station. And so we can see that we have an inflection for both programs, the space program and aeronautical program. They went up, sorry, I was up too quickly. They went up until the 60s, 70s for 50 years, went to the moon, and back to a low Earth orbit. And aviation, the same, went up and stopped at the end of the Concorde, had also a kind of inflection to remain where we are now, which is the same altitude, the same performance, the same speed, the same everything than 50 years ago. So an inflection, again, for both programs. When we had the intention 50 years ago, after the moon, to go to Mars, it's still in our mind, but we did nothing. We stopped doing something very quickly. And in aviation, we plan at the same time of Concorde to have suborbital airplanes, which is a great program. Would have been a great accomplishment, but that never happened. 1 century vertical exploration before the inflection in the 60s, hostile international environment, the Cold War, race for records, relative economical comfort, one the moon, and then. And the new conditions in the second half, calmer political environment, end of the Cold War 15 years later, the importance of the third world, concerns about the future of our planet Earth, budgets shrink and international cooperation. That's what we have in mind now, to do what we can with small budgets and take international cooperation in account. New conditions spending public money. A lot of restrictions have appeared about spending public money and different public interest. So back to the moon is not in our plans right now. It's also to be politically correct. We know that the Chinese most probably will be on the moon in less than 10 years. And with the best will and with the budget that we have at NASA now, we know that it will take more than 10 years to go back to the moon. So we don't want to say that one of our official goals is to go back to the moon, and before we arrive, to see the Chinese flag on the moon. So it probably will happen that we have astronauts back to the moon, not shortly, but in the next 10 years, but that won't be the main goal. Mars, okay, I don't know. The asteroids. Asteroids are a new goal for many reasons. Safety, performance. It's also a great challenge, one more challenge for all of us, to reach an asteroid and destroy maybe an asteroid one day. A mission that will be shared between humans and robots. The deep space, the capture of the asteroid will be done by robots, and low Earth orbit and return to Earth by humans. So I'll talk a few words about the limiting parameters in space exploration. both by humans and robots. The main one, at the time, the speed light, the light speed, 300,000 kilometers per second. That's, in fact, very slow. And deep space travel in relation with delta t, at the speed of light, it takes 1/10 of a second to turn around the Earth. 1 second to reach the moon. 4 years to reach the closest star. At the speed of light, it would take 4 years to reach our neighbor. 300,000 years to cross our galaxy, and 15 billion years across the universe, with a question mark, because that doesn't mean much if you talk to scientists in astrophysics. There are billions of exoplanets in our universe. And of course, nowadays, everyone talks about what is happening on the exoplanets. And happily, at that speed, we would reach an exoplanet after 10 lives on a space vehicle, which would mean a space vehicle should be conceived to have a new population, new astronauts getting born on the spacecraft, and another generation, another a full dream, fully impossible. So probably, even if we are not alone, we are not at the day we will hear that we are going to visit our neighbors. Human space exploration, the tools, selection, preparation. I go quickly here. Preparation for a hostile environment. Space is very hostile. Once you leave Earth's orbit, you are in a world that is very, very hostile. The crew loneliness. So training and simulation will get more and more important. Self and mutual confidence, individual and crew performance, task distribution, which is very well known in commercial aviation, behavior control, that will be in the hands of everyone to control himself and have a look to the others, relations, crew resource management, also something very well known in aviation, and the delta T parameter, influence on authority and responsibility. The further you go from Earth, and the less you will get not only information, but decision from the ground. The goal, manage the risk. So the Jeep on the moon and the safari on the moon, just forget it. Who wants to become an astronaut one day? No one? Okay, then you won't have the safari on the moon. Manage the risk, bring back the crew safely, and succeed the mission. 30 years ago, all that would have been reversed. Mission success first, manage the risk, and bring back the crew safely together. The results, okay, quickly we have seen that. 2 major shuttle accidents. That has been one of the reasons why the space shuttle has been stopped, and 2 Soviet major accidents. The spin-off. I'll let you read it quickly. It's interesting, but you can find that anywhere. We are getting short. The Obama program, beyond low Earth orbit. The stop of the shuttle in 2011, that's already happened. That was an Obama decision. Move to the Orion program, which is the next vehicle that will be able to travel not only around the Earth to the space station, but also go to deep space, the heavy lift, able to move up stuff and space vehicle, and diverse destinations. What Mr. Obama said, and of course he had concerns to say, it's not himself who just said that. The mission of NASA is to explore, to keep exploring, to keep inventing, to keep moving up. And for 20, 30 years, we stopped that. We remained with space station, we remained with the space shuttle, so that was not the normal mission for an administration like NASA. So this had to be transferred to commercial activities and private companies. And that has been done. And international cooperation. Mars exploration roadmap. We won't stop there. The only thing to say is that the last part of the slide, the sustainable human missions to Mars surface, this is not going to happen in the next 10 years. And Delta T and the future of human-robot combined exploration. Very quickly here, it shows that very quickly, once we get far from Earth, the ground has no more contact with you, direct contact. Already on Mars today, it will be between 16, 12, maybe, depending on the position on Mars relative to the Earth, but it can be from 10 to 25 minutes. And that's very long. So you send an order to someone on Mars, gets the order 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, prepare the answer, send the answer back. That will arrive also 15 minutes later. You can imagine a phone exchange at that speed. So this is only on Mars. With Voyager now out of the solar system, I don't know how many hours, but it's far away. And over years, the system becomes antiquated, and over many years, we will need evolutive artificial intelligence. Just imagine, for example, that we send to the next solar system 4 years at the speed of light, and happily we won't go at the speed of light, so probably we would send a new Voyager automated system that would land on a planet around that sun and send back images in 300 years. So imagine that Leonardo da Vinci would have done the same with the tools that they had in the 17th century. What we would receive now from Leonardo da Vinci, we would put it in a museum. It would be of no operational and scientific interest for us. So we have to take that into account, that what we do now might not be interesting for anyone in 2 to 3 centuries. Deep space travel, so it's the same thing. With no artificial evolutive intelligence, it won't get more help, talking about the crews on a spaceship, more help than the Christopher Columbus crews would be in the same situation. The need for innovation is ahead of us, so it's in your hands and in your head. Who wants to become a scientist? You? Welcome. We need scientists, we need innovation, we need inventions. Right now, we are trapped in our little ball. A long journey for mankind, a goal, a mission to reach our dreams with the participation of all, to innovate and spread the results of our discoveries in accordance with the needs of man on Earth, his health, his safety, his wish for a peaceful, long life. We'll keep innovating you will keep innovating in our long journey through progress, taking care of our spaceship Earth and its crew. One day will come when 2001 Space Odyssey will reach the universe, home of mankind. See you on Earth. Ready for your question?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jean-Loup Chrétien. It was very, again for us, very inspiring conference. Maybe we have just a few minutes for one or two questions. We have just a question over there, and we have also one here. Oh, two questions, one there, here, and there.
Have you ever seen any kind of life? And if yes, so were you able to enter in communication with it?
Would you repeat?
Vous êtes française?
En français, oui.
Ouais, tu répéteras en anglais.
Est-ce que vous avez déjà pu voir des traces de vie dans l'espace? Et si oui, est-ce que vous avez pu, vous ou d'autres personnes, rentrer en communication avec eux?
Okay, so the question in English: did we see any track of life in space? And if so, did we have communication with it? The answer is no. And I can answer also for my colleagues. No one has ever seen anything that looks coming from other life. Unhappily, everyone wish that we have neighbors and that we can go and travel on vacation in this nice beach on another planet. Unhappily, no one yet.
We have another question. There's one here and one after.
Did you see something special there, like interest all of us? So I heard about a space trip in the internet. I'm not sure if it's real or not, but maybe someday we'll sign up for it if it's worthy to go there. Did you get my question?
I'm sorry,
not on my side. I'm so
understood
sorry.
the end of the
We'll
end of
just
the question.
repeat again.
What? Okay. Did you see something special there that get our attention, and maybe someday we can go there to visit space?
No, the longest distance we have traveled in space is a trip to the moon, and the moon is empty. There is nothing else.
So we just we will just see the moon. That's it.
What?
We will just see the moon in the space. Nothing more.
And Mars, we have robots on Mars now for several years, and they are sending us pictures every day, movies on Mars, and we have a tremendous amount of pictures on the Mars surface now, at very high quality. And no pyramids, no bones. There is a nice picture with a McDo store, but it's not a real one.
Another question.
Bonjour. Comment vous vous positionnerez quant au paradoxe de Fermi? Paradoxe de Fermi.
Ah, c'est le voyage, comme dans le film, comment il s'appelle? Interstellar?
Le fait qu'il y aurait peut-être des extraterrestres, des vies extraterrestres, mais que l'on n'ait pas vu du tout, qu'on n'en ait aucun signe.
Ah, ouais, alors je ne sais pas si c'est le paradoxe de Fermi, mais on sait qu'il est possible que les univers parallèles existent. Mais ce sont des supputations scientifiques, hein, c'est de bons calculs, de bonnes recherches ont été faites dans ces domaines, mais sans apporter aucune preuve de la réalité de ce type de postulat, d'existence d'univers parallèles. Qu'est-ce qui se passe à la sortie d'un trou noir, par exemple. Et ça reste de la science-fiction. Ça reste de la science-fiction. On peut rêver, on peut imaginer beaucoup de choses, c'est amusant, c'est même motivant, ça fait travailler les ménages, c'est ce qu'ont fait les gens qui ont réalisé le film Interstellar, mais ça reste de la science-fiction. C'est pas du futurisme, de la science-fiction.
Une autre question là-bas. I just want to ask you, do you remember exactly your first flight, your first time, your first minute when you were in a shuttle? To think, what did you think about it in the shuttle the first time? What was your feeling?
On the first
flight in space.
Yeah, the first flight
Please,
The-
thank you to respect the speaker. Thank you very much.
When we get in space, as I said in one of the slides, it takes only 526 seconds to get up. So before the engine start, of course, we are thinking of the dynamic part of the flight, which is the ascent. That's when bad things could happen. So of course, we have to be prepared and think about it. We still don't think about the next part of the flight, which will be in orbit. But that lasts less than 9 minutes. And when the engine stops and we start floating right away, and the people on the ground confirm that everything went normal, of course, this is a great hurrah. That's because we know we are there. There's no reason to turn down quickly. And so we enjoyed the view. We enjoy the view, look through the windows, look at the Earth. And when it is the first time, it's quite fascinating to see the spacecraft moving over the Earth at high speed. But you are so high that you can see a lot of details on Earth. And you see the round horizon and dark sky, the stars. It's views that you had on pictures, but this one is a real one. It's real photons coming to your eyes. So it's a great excitement. Yes.
Why did the Soviet Union let European astronauts fly on their rockets?
Why is it? Sorry?
Why did the Soviet Union let European astronauts fly on their rockets?
At that time in the 80s, we had the first European astronauts moving to Houston, to NASA, for first European spaceflight on the shuttle. And the selection that happened in Europe was conducted by ESA. And not one French astronaut was selected. So we had 4 people going to Houston, 1 German, one from Holland, 1 from Italy. I'm not too sure now, but they were all coming from countries participating to the European space program. The French president at that time got very upset. And why? Just because at that time the budget of the European Space Agency was paid by France to a level of almost 35%, which is enormous, because there were, I think, almost 10 countries or 11 countries at that time participating to ESA budget. So France itself was paying 1/3 of the budget. The next one was Germany with half of the equivalent of French, and the next one was another one with, again, the half of the German. So our president got very, very upset, and that's understandable. So a couple of months later, he was visiting the Soviet Union. And of course, everyone knows that the Soviets had good intelligence on everything happening on Earth. And Mr. Brezhnev told Mr. Giscard d'Estaing, we know that you are very upset, but if you decide quickly, you just send us a couple of your guys, and they will be in space before their colleagues in Houston. So the president came back to France. Of course, he asked people what they thought about such a proposition. He agreed a couple months later, and 3 months later started the selection, and 6 months later we were in Russia, and it's true, I flew a month ahead of my German colleague, Ulf Merbold, who flew on the space shuttle.
We have just last 3 questions, 1, 2, and 3 before Jean-Loup Chrétien needs to catch his train.
Oui, bonjour. Alors, je me demandais, moi, pendant le moment où vous avez été en fait dans l'espace, quelle a été la plus grande difficulté en fait auquel vous avez dû faire face. Enfin voilà.
La plus grande difficulté là-haut?
Oui, voilà, le moment peut-être qui a été peut-être le plus dur pour vous. Enfin voilà.
Après le RER pour Sergi.
The most difficult time during a flight, there has been some events that were unpleasant, but good training takes you back on track. The worst one, and happily we did not realize it so much, but it was critical, was at the end of the EVA outside. The work was much longer than expected, so we went to the end of our oxygen reserve. And when getting back into the transfer module, SAS, I don't remember, the airlock to go back into Mir, I was in charge of the door, and unhappily my helmet was covered with water, so I almost did not see anything. And I could not put the door right in place. And we were starting using our reserve, and I was attempting a second option when I thought it was also a bad option. I was ready to go back when a kind of small voice on the back of my head said, "Oh, did you try this?" So oh yeah, I should try that. And I did not move the door. I tried what was said in my mind, and it worked. But I was just ready. It was just 1 second from taking the wrong decision. In that case, we would not have been able to go back into the space station, and a few minutes later, we were out of oxygen.
Okay.
Hello. I'm here. Hello. Yeah.
Jean-Loup. Last question.
Yeah, I was wondering what would happen if a country or a company wanted to install something on the moon. I mean, if they wanted to create a lab or anything, is there any international law about space yet, or conferences, or?
So you mean to be allowed to buy a part of land on the moon?
Well, I mean, if I want to build a lab on the moon or just in space.
Yeah, just if I may, I just want to complete. It's a very interesting question. What about SpaceX, for instance? And they want to private some, anything about it?
This has been done by some crazy people, and crazy people paid for it. But that's a nonsense. If you are sold a part of the surface of the moon and are not able to get there to defend your property the day when the Chinese go to the moon or the US go back to the moon, the first thing they will do is to erase your property. Say, no, that's not yours. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Okay. There has been lands on the moon sold, again, by crazy people. We got millions of dollars selling part of the moon.
And is there any geopolitical conflict right now in between, I don't know, American, Russian, Chinese, or about the moon? Is there any still geopolitical fight about it?
If you get a property on the moon, you are in the situation that our ancestors met in the United States, in America at that time. If you are not there with the gunnery to defend your property, you are dead or you lose your property. So the people who were paid to have a surface on the moon, good luck. They have to go there first, build a house, buy a pair of guns, and good guns, and get ready to defend themselves when the others will arrive. So that also is science fiction, virtual reality.
Very last question, maybe Laura, yeah? Just here in front of you. So sorry, but we don't have so much more time because
thank you very much for this entire speech. My question is, what did change in yourself between before the flight in space and after, into the man?
Okay, that's a question that comes quite often. I don't think the flight itself changed anything, but the flight is part of a long program that started the beginning of the selection until now. And it's a difference between the life you have before, that I had before, military life, and the day we landed in Moscow and remained in the space program until now. It's a global experience that makes a change. First, after the selection, I was still an officer in the French Air Force, and of course some people were saying, well, we are crazy sending our officers to our enemy country, because the Soviet Union was considered an enemy. And in fact, that was not true. We had no enemy. It was a potential enemy. The east part of the world was a potential enemy. And the good thing is that nothing happened to make it a real enemy. And so we were in a situation of the military attaché at the French embassy in Moscow that could be compared. But of course, the experience was different. And I was working in a Soviet system. So the change happened since that day until now. The flight itself is probably one of the good chapters for the change, but not the only one. The flight only, I would say, doesn't change much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.